What is happening in there? J Gamer Dude here, and I'm not a Yu-Gi-Oh YouTuber, but I wanted to talk about this card here called Mystic Mine. And for anyone who is in the Yu-Gi-Oh community, should definitely know about this card. But just for those of you guys that aren't, Yu-Gi-Oh is a card game released probably I want to say late 90s if not early 2000s. Can't remember the exact year that it came out, but it was during the turn of the around the turn of the millennium, and is usually played with three different types of cards: monster cards, spell cards, and trap cards, and that's usually the makeup of the entire game. Now, Mystic Mine is a card that recently got banned in the actual game itself. And you might be wondering, well, what does this mean? What that means is that this card cannot be used in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, which is where the banned list comes from. And everyone is celebrating. And I'm just going to read the effect out real quick, just for those of you guys that might not know. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, your opponent cannot activate monster effects or declare an attack. If you control more monsters than your opponent does, you cannot activate monster effects or declare an attack. Once per turn during the end phase, if both players control the same number of monsters, destroy this card. So, Mystic Mine falls under the same category of degenerative tactics along the lines of something like self-destruct button or last turn, which are both banned cards that cause an unfavorable outcome, and this more or less can be just used for trolling. So, in order to win a game of Yu-Gi-Oh, you need to decrease your opponent's life points to 0. That's usually the main way to win. And how do people do that? By activating effects or attacking your opponent's life points to remove them completely. So, Mystic Mine is a card where if you put it on the field, it affects both players essentially, being a field card, so it affects everyone who's playing. And whoever has more monsters cannot activate effects and cannot attack, which essentially stops your opponent from playing the game if they have more cards. And that is really, really bad, because the game is not fun to play if you can't play at all. Which is a genius thought to have, because this card was banned from card shops very early on because of its effect. Like, looking at it, anyone could tell that this card needed to be banned, and has only recently been banned since the 1st of December in a shorter ban list that came out just, I want to say, during the last week of, or the beginning of the last week of November. And now that it's banned, people are celebrating, and it's going to be nice to be able to finally see some actual more strategies flourish and not have to keep worrying about this one card, because it changed the game so dramatically that every deck had to have some sort of back row removal. Back row referring to spell and trap cards, because when you look at a Yu-Gi-Oh, you've got 5 cards in front, which you can use for monster cards, and then 5 cards at the back, which are used for spell and trap cards. That's how the zones are split up. And a field spell card is a part of that back row. Technically, you don't put it as part of that part of the field. It actually has its own spot on the top left side of the field. But getting into a little bit too much detail. It remains on the field for as long as you and your opponent don't have the same number of monsters. And the thing about it is that the cards that take effect, that make use of Mystic Mine, are decks where you don't need a lot of monsters on the field. Stuff like Sky Strikers, where you can control the number of monsters on your side of the field, and as long as you control less cards, your opponent really can't do anything unless they activate a spell or trap card that can destroy Mystic Mine. Fascinating, isn't it? And I mean, thank goodness that this card was banned. And again, I hope that it never comes off the ban list, because this has been one of the more recent controversial cards. And I think if I look it up, self-destruct button is another example of this. Yu-Gi-Oh! It just causes a lot of ruling nightmares, and it's unfortunate. But yeah, this card is also banned. Oh, it's unlimited in OCG. Okay, it's forbidden in TCG. There we go. So we're talking TCG, not OCG. But yeah, so self-destruct button. You can activate this card while your life points are lower than your opponent's life points and the difference is 7,000 or more. In which case, both players' life points become 0. So the use of self-destruct button is to cause ties. And so how competitive Yu-Gi-Oh works is that you play, it's pretty much best out of 3. Where you need to win 2 games. Was it games or matches? There's a difference between game and match. So if you win 2 games, you actually better to look up Victory Dragon, but yeah, if you so it's best 2 out of 3. If you win 2, you win that duel. And essentially what happens is if you've won 1 and then you keep tying constantly, because the thing is that if you tie once with your opponent, whoever wins the next one wins. And this self-destruct button allows you to intentionally cause a tie. So you can see the degenerative effect of if you're about to lose, use self-destruct button, immediately lose, and then not immediately lose because it brings both players' life points down to 0. You trigger a tie, and then whoever wins the next game or the next duel pretty much wins. Or you could keep using self-destruct button during when you think you're about to lose each and every single time to keep tying the game over and over until eventually you win. And so Mystic Mine falls under that same strategy of it's just not fun to play, and I don't imagine that anyone really enjoyed playing with this game being legal. So it went from being, you could have I think 3 copies to forbidden now, which means you can have 0 copies in your deck for competitive play. Can't remember exactly, but the main thing is it's banned, and we could not be happier about it. So at least duels are going to be fun to watch now or to play, rather than just to sit there and be skipping people's turns and causing them to lose in alternate methods. Rather than decreasing the life points to 0, it'll be decking your opponent out, which means drawing so many cards that your opponent, when their next, because at the beginning of every turn you need to draw a card. You have to. There's no way around it. And if you can't draw a card, you lose the duel by a method called decking out, where you've drawn every card in your deck. And if you can't draw any more cards, and you're at a point where an opponent's card effect is forcing you to draw a card, or it's the beginning of your turn where you have to draw a card, if you can't, you lose the duel. So that is one of many alternate winning methods, and that's kind of what Mystic Mine has largely been used for. People have been wanting this card to be banned for the longest amount of time, and nobody likes this card, and honestly, the fact that it is banned now is just a breath of fresh air, and I don't think that any of us could be happy enough. But that's enough about me. If you guys, I suppose, want me to explain a little bit more about Yu-Gi-Oh! The game, and actually sort of teach the game a bit, I mean, I think I'd be more than happy to do stuff like that. I've also streamed Yu-Gi-Oh! Before, but I streamed it with the assumption that people probably know what they're doing. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an interesting game, and there's not much like it. So let me know in the comments below if that's something that might be something that anyone would like to, anyone would fancy. Hopefully, we got a lot of people, and then it becomes a good thing. But then again, Not a lot of people watch these videos, so who knows really. I doubt anyone is even probably watching up until this point, and if you are, thank you. I really appreciate it. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about the banning of this card because it's so monumentous about getting rid of this absolutely degenerative effect that has been ruining competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! And now people have had to make decks around it. So for anyone who's still watching, thank you very much for still very much keeping in there, and I will see you guys next time.